Okay, class, I just want to give you a quick mini lecture on chapter 12 in your text where we'll start to talk about the cost. And hopefully you'll read that chapter and study it carefully. There's a lot of information in there. So let me first say that there is a difference between economic profit and accounting profit. Economic profit is how an economist looks at an opportunity. So it includes the total revenue minus total cost, but the costs include both explicit costs and implicit costs. And I'm going to give you an example that'll show you how this works in a second. The accounting profit is the total revenue minus only the total explicit cost, and it's usually larger than economic profit. So looking at the next slide that's in your text, it shows you how the economist views a firm and how an accountant views a firm, and the difference is in the economist counting the implicit cost. So what are the implicit costs? They are implied. Okay, so I'll give you an example real quick. Say you have a dentist who makes $200,000 a year and a factory worker that makes $50,000 a year. Each of them decide they want to leave the work they're doing and become stockbrokers. So they take the license examination and become stockbrokers. 1 year later, they take their books to the accountant to get his calculations on their profitability. And he says to each of them, you did a good job running your business. You each made $100,000. But the economists would say, well, wait a minute, we have to add the cost, the implicit cost to that. The dentist was making $200,000 a year as a dentist. He left to make $100,000 a year accounting profit as a stockbroker, but we have to take away the dental implicit cost for the dentist, and that's another 200,000. So he actually lost 100,000. His economic profit is a negative 100,000. He did not make a good economic decision. The factory worker, on the other hand, made 50,000 in the factory. He made 100,000 as a stockbroker. So his economic profit is 100,000 explicit profit, accounting profit, minus 50,000 for his salary in the factory, gives him a $50,000 economic profit. So he made a good economic decision. The dentist did not make a good economic decision. So that's how it works. All of the costs in an economics textbook are economic costs. Okay, so going forward, everything we look at is an economic cost. In the chapter, it moves on to talk about the law of diminishing returns. So it shows you in this manner. You add workers to your factory and you begin producing and you get more and more output, and then all of a sudden it flattens out. You don't get much more output with 6 workers that you were getting at 4 workers, okay? That's because of the law of diminishing returns. The more people you add to a fixed situation, the point of diminishing returns will eventually occur where the workers are actually getting in each other's way and they don't produce as much, okay? Which leads to the cost curve then being a U-shaped curve, okay? It doesn't continue to grow like this in a straight line. It actually gets to be rather steep after that point occurs, okay? So one of the best ways for you to learn all these different cost terms is to go through this table that is in the text and see how they got the numbers. Okay, I'm going to take one quick example, and that is the first row of 0. We're not producing anything, and we incur a cost of $3. That's probably rent or something for the building, okay? It's the only cost we incur. There's no output. We haven't done anything. We still have bills, okay? Then we produce our first cup per hour, and we have a cost of $3.30. That's because in addition to the $3 of fixed costs, we add 30 cents of variable costs. Variable cost is the materials that go into making the coffee and the wages of the people that you hire to make the coffee. The average then would be to take each of these total costs and divide them by the quantity produced to get the average, okay? So there's the average fixed, there's the average variable, the average total cost is $3.30. Now this marginal cost is what it takes to go from here to here. It takes 30 more cents to go from this level here to this level. That's how you get to marginal cost, all right? And what that results in is every business going has cost curves that look something like this. In the beginning, as they just get started and start out a little labor, they get an improvement in their cost. And then it starts to taper off and it increases. This is the marginal cost going from unit to unit, how much more it costs to produce the next unit. That's called the marginal cost. All right, now for you people that took calculus and you still remember it, marginal cost is actually the derivative of the total cost, okay? That's what it is. It's the slope of the total cost line. So that's for those of you who took calculus, but you don't need to have calculus to understand this stuff, okay? The average fixed cost drops as time goes by, or as you add people, not time goes by, but as you add output, then the average fixed costs start to drop because the fixed costs are constant. And then when you divide them by an ever increasing amount of output, then the average goes down. And then another thing to point out is that this marginal cost hits the variable cost curve at its lowest point, and it hits the average total cost curve at its lowest point. It's where they are minimized, okay? Notice also that the difference between here and between here and here on the variable cost and total cost curves is the amount of fixed costs, okay? Fixed cost is higher here, so these curves are farther apart. Fixed cost is lower here, average fixed cost is lower here, so these curves are closer together. So that particular drawing right there shows every cost situation in every business, okay? That's how it would work out. Now the next one is what happens in the long term. What we just showed was what the average total cost and the other costs would be in a particular situation, and that would be in a short-term situation. So it could be this one right here. The one we just looked at could be this one. This would be a small factory just getting started. But when you start to increase sales, you could increase the size of your operation by adding shifts, adding buildings, or whatever, and you could start to move along this line, which would be your cost coming down because you've added volume. And in this area here is called the constant returns to scale, scale being the size of the operation. So you hit a point where the size of the operation is getting too big and people are having to walk great distances to do their job. There's an inefficiency that exists and you get diseconomies of scale. That means you got to a size where you now are starting to lose profitability, okay? Over here, you're getting an economy to scale. Increasing the size lowered your cost. And in here, you are operating at what they call the minimum efficient scale. You are in a scale that is perfect for keeping your costs minimized, okay? And one last thing I will tell you is this table right here at the end is another way of helping you understand what all the different costs are. So if you have any questions on any of this, I wish you well in your studies this week, and be sure to send me an email or go on the faculty forum if you have questions. Thanks.